So let's take a look at the Tau Empire's mercenary bird people. The Kroot mercenaries are looking more brutal than ever in the new Tau Codex, so let's take a look at all their new rules. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're taking a look at another few units from the Tau Empire Codex. Today I thought we'd do a full review of the Kroot news and changes out of the new book. I certainly think in previous editions of the Tau Codex the Kroot have just felt like a bit of an afterthought. It's kind of easy to see why, as they're kind of an add-on to the Tau Codex as opposed to the main event, and their aesthetic really is quite different to the sleek armour plates and battlesuits of the Tau themselves. In this new 9th edition Dex though, it really does seem that Games Workshop have made a big effort to make the bird carnivores much more playable and much more threatening, and just for their pure stats, I must admit the Kroot carnivores do look pretty threatening at just 6 points per model. In this video we'll talk through the 4 different Kroot units in the book, how they've changed, all the fairly decent amount of support options that are available to them out of the rest of the Codex, and a few thoughts as to how that might translate into actual armies. Plenty to talk about then, so let's jump straight into it. So first up we have the standard Kroot carnivores. They remain 6 points per model, and you can take them in units of 10 to 20 miniatures. They're still armed with their standard Kroot rifle, basically the same stats as a bolt gun with strength 4, AP nothing, damage 1, but their melee is really quite significantly improved, getting 2 attacks at strength 4, AP -1 and damage 1. There's a few different ways that can be buffed further, but it really does mean that Tau Empire do have access to now a pretty efficient combat unit in the Kroot carnivores, even if their scope is pretty limited to just dealing with infantry. They've got a few other helpful special rules though. Quill grenades, which are a d6 shot at strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. Not much, but will often be better than the standard Kroot rifle. They retained their 7-inch pre-game move, which can allow you to threaten the midfield. They still have Obsec, and they've gained an additional small durability buff, giving them +1 armor save when they're in cover. That one's a small and helpful defensive boost, though it's not going to make them into a durable unit. They still have the base save of 6+. Even if they get light cover, that's at best a 4+ save. Still though, for 6 points that's a really meaty amount of damage output, as we'll look at later. And for 6 points I think that Kroot really are looking very, very threatening. Finally, by including a Kroot carnivore kindred, you also unlock some detachment slots. You can basically take their supporting units, the Krootox, Hounds and Shaper, 1 unit of each, completely slot free. It means that if you do want some allied Kroot in your army, they're really not going to be competing too much, you just need to find them 1 troop slot. The other units have all seen a few helpful tweaks as well. The Krootox Riders are down to 25 points from 28. Their gun is heavy too, so you do get the 2 shots all the way out to 48 inches. There basically is an autocannon profile now, and you will be able to move and fire as you're not infantry. Really though, I'd say the main improvement for the Krootox is the melee getting buffed. You now get 4 attacks at strength 6, AP -2, damage 2. Just like the Kroot carnivores, you hit on 3s as well. It does seem pretty good for messing up medium infantry like Space Marines. 3 of them for 75 points will around about down 3 or 4 Space Marines on the charge. Not bad when they're also blazing away with a few autocannon shots as they move up. It's quite nice that they gain the pre-game move as well. 7 inches just like the carnivores and the rest of the Kroot units, so not too bad for putting a burly threat down in the midfield. Durability wise they're kind of interesting. 4 wounds at toughness 5 but with a bad save. Anything with a medium strength and low AP is generally going to shred them quite efficiently, though they could be a bit surprisingly resistant to anti-tank and small arms for the cost. The Kroot Hounds also remain 6 points, and now been boosted to 3 attacks from 2, but they do remain at strength 3. They've got a few other datasheet boosts though. Now they re-roll advance and charge rolls all the time, and they gain the nice pre-game move and +1 save when receiving cover. I think the pre-game move is absolutely excellent for the Kroot Hounds. You can field these in very small throwaway squads, so just being able to put some annoying bodies somewhere in the midfield has a value all of its own, even if you don't really expect them to do much damage. Finally, and perhaps the most drastically changed of any of them, is the Kroot Shaper. He remains just 25 points, but now has become an HQ choice, and to be honest, for that 25 points, he does seem pretty excellent value now. Being an HQ choice does mean that you could field a full detachment of Kroot if you wanted, and he's also got some relics and warlord traits that we'll talk about in a second. Otherwise though, his profile's changed in quite a few ways. He's got 1 wound less, so only 4 now. His Shaper Kroot rifle is a standard one that gets rapid fire 2 but AP -1, so he does put out some decent shots. He can take either a ritual blade for combat that gives him strength +1, AP -1, or choose to swap that out for a grenade belt, which actually gives him a pretty powerful 1-use shooting attack, 2d6 shots at 6 inches, at strength 5, AP -1 and damage 1. Not the easiest to get in range, but if he does manage to set that off once, there's every chance that he's going to pay for his 25 point cost then and there, no matter what else he does. Buffs wise though, he grants his leadership and re-rolls to nearby Kroot units within 6 inches. Not too bad, as the others have fairly poor leadership in themselves. and he also picks up the pre-game move and +1 saving cover that the regular carnivores get. I think if I were taking any sort of meaningful Kroot numbers along, I would be quite tempted by this guy now. Even if he's very fragile to enemy reprisals, he just seems to bring a lot for that 25 points. Now let's move on to talk about a few of the other rules that affect the Kroot in the Tau Codex. First up, they are auxiliar, so they don't have any seps tenets, no seps keyword, and none of them get core, so the buffs that they can get really is quite limited. Still though, the ones that you can use really are quite nice. Unfortunately, they can't use Markalites for the most part, and if you did want a sub-faction to put them in, then the obvious choice is Delith, which seems to be the one that really emphasises working with auxiliaries. It gains the pretty decent advantage of getting auxiliary units to use the Montcar or Kauyon. Montcar in particular just seems to work excellently with the Kroot carnivores, advancing and shooting their guns if they don't have anything to charge, and when they do close with the enemy, getting some reroll ones and extra AP. They've also got a warlord trait that allows nearby auxiliaries to use Markalites if they need to. I suspect for the most part you're usually going to have better places to use those on, but it could be pretty meaningful on say a massive unit of 20 carnivores. Otherwise, besides the Shaper, perhaps the most important choice would be the Ethereal's Power of the Tides invocation. That's one of their new chaplain litanies that goes off on a 3+, and it gives one auxiliary units +1 to wound. Again, that really is excellent on a Kroot carnivore squad, I think. Mass strength 4 attacks just really like that +1. It'll mean that they can even threaten light vehicles with pretty decent power, both at range and in melee. Stratagem wise, it seems the Kroot have two major ones. The first one is Grizzly Feast for 1 command point. That one's really quite a meaningful one that really reflects the Kroot carnivore's lore, basically eating their dead enemies to gain their strength. This quick battlefield snack happens when you kill an enemy unit in melee, then they gain a 5+ feel no pain type save for the rest of the game. It's a really nice bonus for a unit with a bad save. That really makes the difference between being really quite a fragile unit and one that's kind of medium durability. It is going to be kind of situational when you can actually activate it though. The other one, which I think is really good for holding objectives, is a Trap Well Laid. This one allows Kroot units to heroically intervene up to 6 inches and get +1 attack when they do. Quite a nice one for having Kroot scrapping for midfield objectives. It means that they can just jump up and try and tear down any enemies that get too close to them, and getting +1 attack is a pretty meaningful boost to that melee profile and adds to the weight of strength 4 attacks. I think they still would have to be pretty careful about what they actually do for that on though. If your opponent's striking first, you don't really want all of your fairly fragile carnivores killed before they get to attack. Finally, these are the relic and warlord trait options for the Shaper. There's a relic rifle called Kajak Tar. This one makes the Kroot rifle into a half-decent character killer, 24-inch range and rapid fire 2, strength 5, AP -2 and damage 2, ignoring Lookout Sir, and 6s give you 1 mortal wound like sniper weapons. It's still maybe a little bit passable on a model that's only got 4+ ballistic skill, but certainly if you could get it within that 12-inch rapid fire range, you would have a pretty reasonable chance of stacking some damage on one enemy target. The other one is the Borthrod Gland. That's more of a buffing piece, and it gives you a once per game +1 attack and +1 strength aura for nearby Kroot units. That could add up to around about double damage against certain targets. There's a whole world of difference between 2 attacks at strength 4 AP -1 and 3 attacks at strength 5. That could be hilariously destructive in combination with that Ethereal's power for +1 to wound. You'd even be wounding things like knights on 4s. Finally, for warlord traits, I think they're okay, but not exactly necessary. Master of the Hunt prevents enemies from getting cover when they're within 12 inches of your nearby units. I guess that's okay on AP0 Kroot rifle shots. Pack Leader gives the units within 6 inches 3d6 drop the lowest charges. Certainly an extra bit of reliability there, though it does only increase your average charge range to something like 8 or 9ish. And finally, Nomadic Hunter allows you to advance and shoot, units within 6 inches counting as stationary if they didn't fall back. That one does seem quite helpful, but if you are using Montcar plus Delith, then that could basically give you the same for free across the whole army. Overall though, a surprisingly generous amount of support for the Kroot, I think. I think Montcar, the Ethereal's buff, and that Borthrog Gland seem like the picks of the options, and both stratagems seem very usable, though are of course a bit situational. So how does that all come together for the units then? I must admit, I think that the standard Kroot are the ones that I'm most interested in. Kroot Carnivores for 60 points have just very good range and melee damage for just 6 points, though it is very anti-infantry focused. If you do get into a good situation where one unit gets a full round of shooting and a charge off, just 60 points worth of Kroot on average kills around about 12 guardsmen, 2 or 3 regular space marines, or 3 or 4 wounds to a toughness 7 vehicle. If they're a Delith Sept unit with Montcar and +1 to wound, that increases by really quite a lot, 17 guardsmen, up to 4 space marines, or 6 wounds to a toughness 7 vehicle. Not bad for 60 points and one fairly cheap character. The downside is of course the durability. They are only toughness 3 with a bad save. and that's not exactly the most ideal thing ever for a unit that you generally want moving forward and screening for the other Tau. The +1 save though does make it mean that you can use cover a bit more effectively than most. Genuinely, I think playing intelligently round terrain will actually help out a big Kroot army quite a lot, and of course Grizzly Feast seems quite good whenever you can use it on a reasonable sized unit. I think their durability gets kind of okay after that. I feel like a lot of Tau lists might well use them as a pre-game moving threat. Getting that many bodies towards the midfield objective seems really nice. Both objectives secured and having a bit of melee threat are both important niches within the army. Otherwise, I think that both Hounds and Krootoxes both seem useful. I really like the look of Hounds as just a really cheap expendable annoyance, 4 for 24 points, and pre-game move them forward to move, block, or tie up key units. They're really not going to do all that much damage, but they don't really need to at that points cost. I think it could be massively frustrating for the opponent's force if something like 70 points worth of Kroot Hounds just move along their entire battle line and stop them moving forward properly first turn. Finally, I do really like the Shaper. He seems great if you're using 2 or 3 units of Kroot perhaps. Always handy to have another annoying character around, and if he does get that grenade belt off against an infantry unit, it does look like he could very well just pay for himself then and there at 25 points. As I said previously, I think I'd be most tempted to take that Bothrog Gland relic, even just with that alone, plus maybe an ethereal to cast that tide. You could even make a minimum unit size squad of Kroot into a massive melee threat. 30 strength 5 attacks at AP -1 with +1 to wound is going to make a mess of most things. So overall, I think it's really positive news for the Kroot in the new Tau Codex. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, but I think that Games Workshop have done quite a good job to actually make the bird people relevant, and I feel like they're going to be quite a popular choice in Tau armies in the new book. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Hopefully there'll be plenty more for the Tau, including a full review of their codex when I get a chance. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the content on the channel, I would just like to mention the channel's Patreon page, which is down in the video description. It is what supports me to keep on making these videos, and it's quite a big motivation to keep on making them, even when my vocal cords are trying to give up on me. I do try and give a fair few benefits for patrons, including seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.